which is very rare. For
Live streaming is on.
Yeah, that is very strange. It's almost like they know what you're doing.
All
They're
right.
on to me. Okay, so we're officially live now. Very rare.
Yep.
Okay. Well, then congratulations to everybody on making it to the final round. And with
live
that,
yet.
I believe
I have
we
it
have
on my tablet.
Oh, we're not live? No, well, just
Right?
kidding then. Well, I guess you'll just,
There we
it
go.
is live. All right, cool, great. Okay. Well, then with that, let's start with Samantha Smithart, and you can, I'm going to send you the prompt in just a second, and then we will start time after a moment. Oh, give me a thumbs up that you got it when I send it.
Will do.
Thirty seconds used. One minute used. One minute 30 used.
In the movie WALL-E, we see this rambunctious little robot who's really adorable. But when we look at the plot line of the movie, it's the idea that the Axiom has been in space for far longer than it was originally intended to be. They've sustained life on this spaceship and created and kept going, all because the planet was destroyed, which kind of takes us to the quotation today. My plan to get great skin from wearing no makeup during quarantine has really been foiled by all of the existential dread and anxiety, said by Emma Gray. And what Emma's telling us is that we should realize that things don't always go exactly how we plan. We see that with WALL-E, they didn't anticipate to be in space for that long and lose the bones in their body, but that's what ended up happening. And we're going to see through three specific examples, the first being the Night Witches, the second being Ratatouille the Musical, and the third being an AFJ ROTC program from Peoria High School, that things just kind of go in the way that they will, and they're going to end up how they end up, whether that's good or bad. First, going on to the Night Witches. It's something that has a really fun name. Back in Soviet Russia during World War II, it was a group of women who were forced together to be the nurses and the nurses platoon for Soviet Russia. Back then, they didn't want to do that. What they wanted to do was fly through the air and take out enemy bases, enemy tanks, and all of these fight in the war. And so that's what they did. Instead of being forced to do instead of being pushed together and being forced to be nurses and taking care of the men who weren't making the best decisions in their opinion, they got together at night, took and stole terrible planes that should not have been flying, that flew too low to be registered on radars, and ended up being one of the best secret squadrons that ever was formed by Soviet Russia back in the day. They had so many successful missions and only lost 3 aircrafts in the amount of like 6 months. They were able to take out squadrons and bases so quickly because their planes flew too low for enemy radar to register. While they weren't pulled together for the intention of being a badass squadron, that is what they ended up doing, and they took such a large number of enemies down. We can see that they didn't plan on being this squadron, but that's what they did, and they were incredibly successful. Next, moving on to Ratatouille the Musical, something that we're all familiar with because TikTok has plagued our lives. We see that with Ratatouille the Musical, this group of writers and musicians and dancers all got together because they thought Remy deserved a music number. What we saw with Ratatouille the Musical is this online collaboration that exceeded the world that we were living at this point. Pandemic forced us to be in isolation, but Ratatouille the Musical brought people together so much so that they had an official Broadway live stream of everyone's hard work being brought together for one source, and that's to raise money for the Actors of Broadway Association. I don't know the official name. But we can see that with Ratatouille the Musical, they weren't intending for this to go big and to be an official Broadway production like it was for the most part online anyways. What they were just intending was just some kind of release and some kind of fun. We see that next move from Ratatouille the Musical, they were successful online. Let's go look at Peoria High School's AFJ ROTC program. Back in 2017, they lost their lieutenant colonel for moving to another school, and the lieutenant colonel who was supposed to take his place never showed up. What that high school had during that year was an Air Force inspection, which means they are being inspected by the Air Force to see if they can continue running their military program. But without a lieutenant colonel, things kind of fall out of place. The seniors that year had no idea what to do without that leadership because Sergeant Hicks, their other commanding officer, was trying to run the rest of the program. So they turned to the rivals of their high school, Cactus High School, and it's this huge 70-year rivalry, and they asked their lieutenant colonel if they could step up and take their colonel's place for the time being. With the help of Colonel Zamora and Sergeant Hicks, those seniors were able to band together, create an incredible presentation, and impress the Air Force inspector so much so that they got an exceeds with merit, which is the highest level of achievement you can get for an Air Force inspection in a high school AFJ ROTC program. We saw that they banded together with an unlikely helpful alliance, and they were able to succeed far more than they expected. The seniors were just trying to keep their program open, and they managed to achieve the highest level of distinction that they could. Going back to the quotation we received today. My plans to get great skin from wearing no makeup during quarantine has really been foiled by by all of the existential dread and anxiety, said by Emma Gray. What Emma was telling us with this quotation is that we should realize things don't always go how we plan. We saw that with the Night Witch is becoming this incredible force to be reckoned with. We saw that through Ratatouille the Musical becoming an official online musical, and we saw that through Sergeant Hicks's Peoria High School AFJ ROTC program. Going back to Wally, they were able to plant that tree. May I be excused to my next round?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for your speech today. Good luck in your other round.
Good luck, everyone.
This sort of, there's so many things that have to click to get everybody prepped. Oops. It's not what I meant to do. I feel like an old, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, technology doesn't make sense to me. There we go. I'm going to send you your prompt here in just a moment, Michael. You noticed my time signals. I should have like warned everybody what my time signals were, but like as long as that works with everybody If you need me to make an adjustment for you, please let me know ahead of time. Yeah. All right. I'll give you a few moments to read this, and then you can take it away.
Opening quotation now.
Time starts. "30 seconds used. "1 minute used. Pausing the timer. For
In the
just
early
before getting-
ages of war, we had a choice to make. We had to choose if we wanted to go to war at sea or on land. And Russia was known as one of the biggest fighters for the war at sea. They had the biggest navy the world had seen, and they loved to flex that strength. But when Japan decided they wanted to be strong themselves, they challenged Russia. Russia said, okay, that's fine. We can play this game. That's not an issue. I'm going to go and I'm going to send my biggest, baddest ship with my biggest and baddest men and show you just why you don't challenge Russia. What happened reminded me of the quotation that I was given today. The dumbest thing I purchased was a 2020 planner by Unknown. We interpret this quotation to mean that you can't always expect the unexpected. And we agree with this interpretation, and we'll be exemplifying this through our 3 examples for today. That of a whiskey river, that of a group of people who just did whatever they wanted in what other place than Florida, and how a plane exploded, but nobody died. So when we look to the Whiskey River, we can look to Dublin, Ireland. And this, at the time, this place was known as the place to get whiskey. As you can imagine, Ireland is known for producing alcohol, and at the time, a malt house was the best place in town to get that alcohol. But one day, when this malt house caught fire, it started to leak alcohol into the streets. This leakage turned into a river and flooded not only the streets, but a large portion of the town with all of the whiskey in the malt house. As you can imagine, this is a tragic event for the malt house, but an extreme opportunity for the people of Dublin, Ireland. So the people scrambled. They got a hat, they got a shoe, they got whatever they could get their hands on and used it as a vessel to get their drink on. A lot of them had a grand time. And although everybody, or seemingly everybody, was drunk that day, there were a surprisingly few amount of deaths, with a total of 3 people losing their lives to what else but alcohol poisoning. The malt house had no way to expect something like this, exemplifying that you cannot expect the unexpected to happen, and there's no way to plan for it. The people of Dublin, Ireland had no way to plan for it, but they took an opportunity and ran with it. However, what we do see a lot less of is running in Vernon, Florida, also known as Nub City. This is a typical town in Florida with a very atypical way of handling business. You see, in Vernon, Florida, a lot of people have what's known as life insurance. Like you and me, we all subscribe to this activity. If you get hurt, you get paid. And in Vernon, Florida, they saw this as an opportunity. They saw, hey, if I get hurt, I get paid. This is a fantastic idea. So what ended up happening is they had happy accidents. I was running after my chicken. I tripped over and I lost a leg. I was walking down the street and I mistook my foot for a rabbit and I shot it clean off. These people, time and time again, committed what in essence was insurance fraud, but they didn't get in trouble because they had the wounds to prove it. And now if you go into Vernon, Florida, and you try to pull out an insurance claim, not only will you be denied, you'll be denied on the sole purpose that you live in Vernon, Florida. The insurance companies had no way to expect that this kind of thing would happen in Florida, but the people of Vernon, Florida took it as an opportunity to better their lives. What we did see at one point is in a couple of years back in 2010, a plane randomly explodes in mid-flight. The window of this plane explodes because the bolts on the plane were loosened with the wrong, or tightened with the wrong bolts. At the time, the plane depressurizes, the pilots lose consciousness. One of them gets flung out of the window, but is caught by a stewardess. Nobody had any way to expect this to happen, but the stewardess took action immediately, grabbing the pilots by their legs and holding them for the duration of the entire flight. Nobody expected this to happen, but what was even more unexpected was that nobody would be harmed in this entire flight. Them landing safely, and the pilot, although cold, was fine. So when we look to the quotation that we were given today, that the dumbest thing I ever purchased was a 2020 planner, we interpreted to mean that it's impossible to expect the unexpected. And we exemplified it through the Whiskey River and how that mole house had no way to predict that occurrence. How the insurance companies had no way to expect the people of Vernon, Florida to take advantage of the situation. And the stewardess had no way to expect the plane to randomly explode. But when we look back to the battle against Japan and Russia, we saw that not only was Japan able to win this fight, in an unexpected turn, Japan was able to win the fight against the powerhouse of Russia, while sustaining 0 casualties in what would go on to be known as the biggest defeat Russia had ever seen.
Excellent job. Thank you very much. And I apologize for the confusing time. The timer on FTN just randomly went from 2 minutes to 1 minute, and I got very confused. So,
No problem.
And then for the rest of the speech, I had to do math because it kept like jumping between 2 times. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. Anyways, yeah, let's move on to Cameron. Go ahead and get ready, and I will get you your prompt here in just one moment. And I am sending you your prompt now. Time starts. Thirty seconds used. 1 minute used. $1.30 used.
Hypocrisy and unity. Those aren't just words to me. These are going to come into context in our words from a Pennywise song, in which I was given the quote today, very apparent, now that the best thing about meeting up with people in person was not having to look at your own face while you did it, Imogen West Nights. And I have interpreted this to mean about not being in person and how this is allowed people to avoid being truthful or allowed people to act in ways that they normally wouldn't act. And to show this, I will first talk about internet warriors, and then I will talk about telling a lie and how this is evolved into obviously clear hypocrisy. To begin, internet warriors. I'm sure we've all ran into one here or there. We've all heard the term. An internet warrior is somebody who's going to threaten you, bully you, intimidate you, try to push their viewpoints onto you while not acknowledging you in any way, shape, or form, because they recognize all that you can do is respond by a keyboard, talk shit, and they argue with you, and they will say the most atrocious things because they understand nothing can be done. And we can see that this is hypocrisy in the sense that this is not what most people would do if they were right in your face. They would not behave in this manner if they were right in your face, because they know under most circumstances there would be repercussions. People would call them out. People might act in an adverse way. People might find them threatening. And it is because of these reasons that they only go to the internet to behave in this such manner. This has been very harmful, and we can see that this is not unity in the sense that it has divided us even further, where we are no longer connected as a species. When, as a United States, we need to be united, as we have. In the only way we're going to overcome these difficulties is through unity. So, which now I'm going to go into my second topic that I talked about telling a lie. And one of the examples we can know about when we're in person of if a person is lying or not is if they look at you or not. Because one doesn't want to give you eye contact, and when it's averting away, we can tell that, this person's probably not being truthful. This is not an absolute certainty, but it is something that we can recognize as a means of when people are being untruthful. And it is much easier to tell when people are trying to dissuade us or disillusion us through their lies and their hypocrisy when we are in person. And I would like to promote this example through ignorance of anything is no excuse. This is a philosophy that I personally promote. This originated from ignorance of the law is no excuse, in which I have learned that this evolves into anything. If you have no knowledge about your car and you go to a mechanic has been known to take advantage of people, overcharge them, or do stuff that is not needed to the car just to get more money because you don't know anything about that car. This is also worked into the medical industry, where they are taking a splint where there's almost 80% of your body. There's nothing you can do if you get a broken bone, but they're going to charge you outrageous amounts of money just because you go in there for a splint on your finger or a cast on your toe. This is something that is highly minimal in cost, but because of our ignorance how to take care of this medically, we are being taken advantage of. We can see the hypocrisy in this, in the sense that they've made an oath, the Hippocratic oath, in fact, of taking care of their patients to the most need, to do what is needed for the patients. And this is what unity is about, is taking care of the patients. Instead, it's become about money, taking advantage of our fellow people. And so I have talked about today, very apparent now, that the best thing about meeting up with people in person was not having to look at your own face while you did it, is absolutely true in the sense that people don't want to be talking face to face because then they can lie. Then we can continue these lies, this hypocrisy, and this deceitfulness where one person is saying, acting one way that they would not behave in another. And I think that it is apparent that these are not beneficial things, that they are hypocritical and divide us, rather when we need to be united as a nation to combat the current things such as hypocrisy in politics, qualified unity, racism that is plaguing our nation, immigration policies when we used to be an immigration nation. Like, these are clear hypocrisies and divisions of unity that we need to separate from. And so it is clearly that when we talk about the very apparent now that the best things about meeting up with people is so that they can avoid lying, that I've covered this through internet warriors and the deceitfulness and how all of this is connected together to show full circle that hypocrisy and unity, they're not just words to me. And I'm not going to take it anymore. Pennywise. Thank you, guys.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Stephen is not with us at the moment, correct? No, I'm not missing a person bubble on my screen. Okay, great. So we'll just move right along to Sarah Harmon. Let me get you your prompts ready.
Okay, and will the prompts, I missed that, is it being sent through like a private chat? Will it pop up on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just have your chat open and it should pop up.
Okay.
I am sending the prompts now.
Okay.
Time starts. .30 seconds used. .1 minute used.
In the Broadway musical Hamilton, we see the title character, Alexander Hamilton, fight hard for independence in the first act. Yet, in the second act, the society that he lives in is still plagued by a lot of these same issues that he were plagued by before independence took place, showing that, in fact, one singular event will not change a systemic issue. This brings us to today's quotation by Wesley Bonner that says, "Turns out 2021 was just 2020 using a different email address to get the free trial." This, in fact, means that arbitrary things such as numbers don't change systemic issues, as we see within this. 2021 becoming 2021 did not repair all of the issues that caused 2020. And we can, in fact, affirm this as true for two distinct reasons. Change requires actual action. And in order to repair systemic problems, we must fix the system itself. First, change requires action. This can be seen through the example of the founding of FedEx and the development and use of bubble wrap. FedEx was founded by CEO Frederick Smith, and while we now know it to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it was not always this way. In fact, in the early years of the company, there was a point in time where FedEx only had $6,000 left to its company's name. So what did CEO Frederick Smith do to repair this? He took that $6,000 to Vegas and put it all down on blackjack. By the end of the weekend, he had $40,000 to that company's name, just enough money to keep it in business for one more week. By the end of that week, he was finally able to secure $1 million investment that he had been trying so hard for, showing that in fact, he needed to take that action in order to change his path of life, showing that arbitrary things aren't actually what change systemic issues. Next, the example of the development of bubble wrap. Bubble wrap was first invented by two New Jersey engineers in the 70s as a form of textured wallpaper. Now, as we all know, that invention, that use didn't particularly pan out. So what did they try to do? They tried to change the use of their invention by marketing it as greenhouse insulation. Now, this didn't particularly end up working out either. But when IBM developed their new computer, they were looking for a packaging material. So by changing their marketing and by pitching it to them as a packaging material, they were able to change the course of this seemingly failed invention, showing that arbitrary things such as numbers don't actually change the systemic issue and that we must actually take action. Next, we must actually repair the system in order to make systemic change. This can be seen through the example of philosophers Diogenes and Jeremy Bentham. Diogenes was a 4th century BC Greek philosopher who existed during the same time as Aristotle and Socrates. But his philosophy was in fact quite different. He thought that these other two philosophers were far more materialistic and that it was leading to a systemic downfall and focus on objects rather than actual value of philosophy. So what did he do? He took specific action in order to repair this system by living in a barrel for the rest of his life to show his values of anti-materialism. Throughout his 93-year life, he was able to advocate for this anti-materialistic policy in a way that changed ancient Greek society for the better, showing that arbitrary numbers don't actually change systemic issues and that we must actually actively try to repair the system. Next, philosopher Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham was a 19th century European utilitarian philosopher who saw all of the harms that were being done by the fact that the water was not being purified. This was leading to hundreds and thousands of children dying every year due to this poor water quality. But the government itself did not see it as its responsibility to purify this. So he advocated for the rest of his life for changes in the system, for changes that focus on public health as we know it today. And because of this utilitarian advocacy, he was actually able to repair the system, showing that arbitrary numbers aren't what changed this system, but that we must actually take action to repair the systemic issues. Turns out that 2021 was just 2020 using a different email address to get the free trial, as stated by Wesley Bonner. This means that arbitrary things like numbers don't change systemic issues. And we can see this because of the fact that change requires action and that we must specifically take action to repair the system itself. As seen through the example of Alexander Hamilton in the Broadway musical Hamilton. Even when you fight for this independence, even when you do all of this action, that will not inherently lead to the damages found within the system. And by fighting for this systemic change, we refuse to throw away our shot.
Wonderful job. Thank you very much.
So before you send your prompts to me, because I'm going to assume that I'm next considering Stephen is still not here, I actually have 2 cameras set up. I have one for speaking and this one. This one is not as good quality because I have a Mac. So I would like to set up that other one now and have it going. It's just, you're going to see half my head for prep. So I like to make
That's
sure
fine.
that the judges are okay with it. And I've done that all season. So I just want to do it again. Make sure everything's good.
You're totally fine. Go
Okay.
ahead and get that set up, and once you're set up, I'll send you prompts.
All right. It's all good.
That was going to be a very long process. Okay, I will send you your prompts now. Time starts. $30 used.
One of the most famous children toys in the world is Play-Doh. As funny as it sounds, Play-Doh actually serves a very important role in human history. When it was first invented, it was used as a mechanism to remove wallpaper. It was not, in fact, a children's toy. However, it failed really, really bad at this and was then integrated into schools for teaching and for creative stimulation, which leads us to today's quotation by Jake Vig. Seems a lot like 2021 keeps asking, what would 2020 do? Now, what this quotation is saying is that we look to the past to figure out what to do in our current moment. And we can agree with this on the 2 ideas that the past teaches us lessons and the past may have contained happier times that we use for the future. So when we look to the idea that we can learn some important lessons from our past, we can agree with this for the 2 key figures of Alice Paul, a women's suffrage fighter, and Alex Underwood, a environmentalist. Now, Alice Paul was fighting for her women's suffrage rights in a time that women did not have any rights. They were not equal to their other man. However, she did not give up. She was arrested, force-fed, and beaten for her beliefs, but she never stood down because she had learned a lesson from what other people had done in their fights for independence or their fights for rights. She knew from the past that she had to keep fighting for what she wanted in order to win women's suffrage rights, which relates today's quotation by we can learn lessons from the past. We can also see this through Alex Underwood. Alex Underwood had the question of where people fit into the role of nature, whether we were the top of the food chain or the bottom. However, when she was attacked in the Amazon by a crocodile and barely lived the attack, she learned her lesson very quickly. Looking back on this past experience allowed her to understand that humans are indeed
not the top of the food chain, and that we should have a bigger respect for nature. But it was only by having this traumatic experience happen and by viewing the past that she was able to come to this conclusion. Because like Vig states in his quotation, the past can teach us lessons. We can also see that past can contain happier times, which we can use to promote happier times in the future. We can see this through Tank Man, a revolutionist, and Alex Wixcon, a sailor. Now, Tank Man is an interesting man because he has no identity. He was a Chinese man that stood up for his rights in 1989 when he stood in a square by himself as tanks were rolling up on him. It was a traumatic sight because the government was breaking down on its people and demanding different things that the people did not believe with. However, he decided to fight back and make a stand. So he stood as the army marched onto him, and the pictures taken from it shows just how much he was willing to fight for the better life, for the happier future. Because before the government was cracking down, they were living in a happy life. And he was willing to look at the past and at that happier life to make it come forth in the future, which is what the quotation is saying. We can also see this through Alex Wixcon. Alex Wixcon is a woman that loves to sail across the Atlantic, but after being struck by a hurricane in 2013 and barely surviving, she had to question whether she would sail again. However, sailing was her passion. So she decided to sail again despite the fear, because sailing in her past made her happy. And she was willing to chase after that happiness that she learned from the past into the future, which is what Vig's quotation is saying today. So when we return to today's quotation by Jake Fig, seems a lot like 2021 keeps asking, what would 2020 do? We can understand this to mean that the past gives us important lessons or important happy times that can lead us into the future. And we can agree, which relates back to Play-Doh, because Play-Doh is something that we play with at such a young age. But it moves on into our later lives because it stimulates creativity. And we can learn from our past experiences with a little children toy how to be creative and successful in our future.
Wonderful job. Thank you very much. I guess we go into lunch next, so I'm willing to wait with the other judges for a little bit. Just have to we'll take it. But in the meantime, again, congratulations everybody on making the finals.
So I will be honest, I've been in contact with our coach because we are from the same team. Our coach is aware that Steven is not here. I have called him 6 times magically, and coach is calling him. So hopefully he is here very soon.
That actually helps a lot.
But congratulations to everyone else in this round.
Good luck with any other things you guys all have today. And yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, congrats everybody. I think if the other 2 judges agree, I think we can let you 4 go and wait a couple more minutes for Steven, but it's pretty far past the start time, so we'll probably give him about 5 more minutes or so. But I don't think you have to stay here and wait with us. I think y'all can go eat and rest. And awesome job. Congrats on making it to finals.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. Definitely, we can wait it back, and you guys are free to go eat and rest. And again, congratulations! Yay! Get some rest. You deserve it.
I'll let my coach know that you guys are putting a 5-minute time limit on it, which is completely appropriate. So if he's not here then have a good day, guys. Thank you so much for judging.
Hey y'all, so it's 11:30, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the live stream because it looks like Stephen won't be here.